The Dan Dan Flow is all about human stories. Gives us a chance to look at the joy, the misery, the adventures, the wisdom and knowledge gained along the way of other people. And so I think for everyone it's worth paying attention because it gives you an opportunity to look at the world through someone else's eyes perhaps, and also to look at yourself and sort of maybe use that as part of how you can move forward in the world. Either what to do or what not to do. Both are useful. I want to say, Colin Vorster, welcome to the show. I've really been meaning to get you on for a long time, so this is a real privilege. I know your son very well, and so from time to time when you visit Cape Town, I get to see you and get to hear some of your stories, and it just sounds absolutely amazing. So, welcome.
Donnie, thank you. It's fantastic. Obviously a new sort of experience for me, but I think I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm not sure what I really got myself into, but I think we should go for it. Maybe there's somebody out there that could benefit from some of the questions that I've got to answer.
Yeah, if nothing else, at least some entertainment, right? Aristotle said theatre, and I suppose this kind of thing for the same thing is to educate and to delight, and the two sort of run together. So people might notice that you have a refreshment. This is a traditional South African brandy and coke. It is a really important part of the ritualistic behavior in South Africa.
Absolutely. It might be a bit early for me, but it's a good way to start up. It's a good way to start.
Yeah, place and time.
But thanks for having me here, Donnie.
Yeah, no, it's, I mean, like I say, an absolute honor. So before you run through, because there's so much in your story, and the suggestion was actually made that we try to put together something like an 18-hour set of like days and days to try and get all of your story, sort of create a whole biography. And perhaps, we might do that somewhere down the line. But I think for the moment, just to have a little appetizer of some of the adventures of your wild life. I'm going to start, this is obviously a couple of years ago, and you can give me some date context if you wish, but you were conscripted and became a sapper. Yep. Most people might not know what that is. What did you actually do in the military?
Okay, Donnie. Well, as you know, those days, it's been a couple of years. I mean, I'm on the older side now, but you've got to try and figure things a bit backwards. So after school, you got drawn into the military. Matriculated at the age of 17. I joined the military already. So in my first year, I turned 18 in the military. And the Sapper unit is the School of Engineers. In Afrikaans, we've got a different name for it. That doesn't really match the engineering part, but anyway, it was quite exciting. Everybody had to do their thing. The training was 4 year long before I went to the border, Southwest African Angolan border, where I had to spend some time there, and was very fortunate to have a lot of experiences there. But I guess that's not what the whole conversation is going to be about today. But I could let you in to some of the things that so that the younger generation could probably understand what has happened to our older guys now.
Yeah, I think it's something for a lot of people in the world don't see military action firsthand. And a lot of people who serve in militaries might not actually see real action. Of course, there are people who do. And I think in South Africa, a lot of the younger people don't realize what it means to have gone through conscription, to actually go fight a war, and the effects on yourself and your understanding of the world and life.
Yeah, absolutely, Donnie. And then some of the things you actually start discovering now at the older age, what the real impact was of going to the military so young. But it's quite interesting. At the moment, I'm joined up with one of the old South African military veterans group, and you can really see a lot of guys is losing it at this age. All of a sudden, they start remembering backwards what was things when
They
they
sort
were
of
young.
repressed those memories for a long time, and now
Now it pops out.
Now it pops out.
It pops out. Especially if you join one of those groups, you can see the guys are, a lot of them are really lost. But yeah, if we want to go that direction, it could just give you a brief background on how things evolve and what was the different sort of impacts. So you had like a choice. You could either join the military direct after school, or you could get an exemption if you're going to go to university and study a degree first. So,
and then go to,
and then go and do the
or you
military.
could just go to jail.
Obviously. Okay, or you could just go to jail. But the difference was quite, I'm trying to summarize it into words, but the problem that evolved, so the guy that, as myself, that went directly after school, okay, and then you get the other group of your matriculant or after-school friends that went to university first. So when you come back after 2 years, or some of us longer, 3 years, and then wants to continue your university study, all of a sudden you're like a first-year student, but you've got a lot more advantage.
You've seen the world.
You've seen a lot. And that is also, that's where the trying to adapt starts going wrong, because all of a sudden you are like a senior first year at the university campus. Had its benefit though, you can date the older ladies at the university. And then I remember at the end of my exams in my first year, it was already in November, I was drafted immediately from university back to the border for 2 months compulsory military camp. So I really got it at a bad stage. In those years, you were quite active. You had to do, for 10 years, you had to do your 2 months, 1 year, 1 month the next year. And I was always drawn up
Luck of the draw.
to the Namibian border, yeah. But yeah, I've seen a lot there. I enjoyed it. I think it has given us a lot of experience in life. A lot of it's got to do with planning your day, thinking forward the whole time. What could happen in a situation? You get it in the young people today. They can't, like, I'm trying to describe the feeling. It's thinking of what could happen if I do this. And a lot of young guys is not in that situation.
Yeah, what you're saying is, so as a very young person, before you even went to university, you were in situations where obviously you saw friends die around you. You realized that your decisions can cost you your life.
Absolutely.
And at the same time, you can't just go lie under a log. You have to move forward. You have to do things. You have to take those risks.
Yes.
And you have to figure out how to take risks without trying to be a Rambo. And that sort of forces you into a place of generating judgment that allows you to handle risk.
Absolutely, Donnie, absolutely. But I think if we could move off a bit from the military side, because that was a thing where a lot of young South Africans were captured, depending on the years of service, because after 86 things started slowing down a bit. It was in the peak in our years. I'm thinking about military operations, bigger ones like Protea. I was in that particular one in 1982, and young chaps doesn't really have an idea how big it was and how the things played out at the end. But I enjoyed it. Gave me a lot of satisfaction. If I have to choose, I'll do it over again. I think that's a good way to look at it.
And so you're touching on studies. You studied something that allowed you to end up in finance. Is that financial planning, management?
Yes. I went that direction. Actually, when I got back from the border, I wasn't sure what I really wanted to do. At one stage, I felt like joining the permanent force. But I got to university. I remember the registration there. I was a bit late. Got there, looking up friends that was with me in school, but they now third-year seniors at university, standing in the rows, asking them what might be the easiest course at this university. and then Of course, some of them recommended that direction. I don't think it was the right choice, but yeah.
But ultimately, even though it may seem like the wrong choice, it's something that led you on a life of adventure. We're going to sort of skip ahead quickly. At some point, they're sort of looking for some of the top performers. I believe that's in industry already. You were already there. And then you had an opportunity to go to the US.
That's correct.
As part of some delegation representing some of the top young investors.
Yes.
Finance guys.
Actually, a lot of people will be familiar with it. It's what they call the $1 Million Round Table. So I qualified for that. And my first event, you get like an entry level, just a qualification, and then you get like a court of the table, and then you, of course, the top of the tables. But I qualified as a court of the table, and I went to San Francisco. That was my first trip overseas, and really enjoyed it, and that opened up a lot of opportunity, meeting up with people from all over the world. So this is not just, the delegates weren't just United States delegates or South Africa, from all over the world spectrum. And already there, my mind opened up to what would be possible, what could be accomplished, because
so
you
just
get different perspectives.
Widening your horizons,
Yep,
and showing
absolutely.
you a little bit more of the world. And
Absolutely.
and then you wandered into a shop, sort of leather goods shop. Was
Yep.
it briefcases and handbags and
No, not really. One of the guy that was my top of the table, okay, but arrogant guy, so I'm not going to mention his name. but you're like wanting to open up conversation with people, and this guy had an ostrich skin briefcase, and I was staring at the briefcase because I liked obviously I knew the skin, the ostrich skin. But I was more or less looking at the way the locks open. You like touch it and then it opens up nice. So I took quite an interest in this. And this guy was so arrogant enough. He said, "This is real ostrich skin. You know how much this briefcase cost?" This like in an arrogant way. And then he went on, and the whole thing started. And I said, "Well, yeah, it's ostrich skin. It's a beautiful briefcase." And he mentioned the price. It was like $5,000 those
Jeez.
days for an ostrich skin briefcase in the United States. And I thought I could be arrogant as well. I said, "Well, for $5,000, I'll send you 2 real ostriches." And that's how that's how I got into the ostrich business, trying to figure out, well, $5,000, even at those days, exchange rates was a hell of a lot of money. Why pay 5,000 rand for a briefcase if you can?
$5,000.
$5,000, yeah, for a briefcase if you could buy 20 ostriches in South Africa for $5,000. And that's how I got into the ostrich side, of the business.
So, Colin, I know plenty of the story, and I can't tell all of it. Oh, there's me knocking the microphone. But from there, you decided this is a gap in the market.
Absolutely.
But there were some challenges around legality of import-export at that point. This was still in the old South Africa?
There was still the old South Africa.
So there were some trade sanctions and things in place. So.
Yes. Was the old boards. There was a banana board. There was
a peanut board, and an egg board,
a grain board, and a ostrich board, and whatever. So it wasn't so easy to get the ostrich into the United States. There were ostriches from years before that, but the opportunity was there. But we had to bypass obstacles, and that's how I got into the ostrich business in the United States. We just figured out a way. If the ostrich was too big, or if it couldn't fly there by itself, we had to.
They're not particularly well known for flying themselves anywhere.
For flying, so it was pretty soon that we figured out. Well, we've got to get the egg there, okay. And once the egg is there, you've got to incubate it, and that's how the whole thing started up. And then I was running quarantine stations, importing eggs. from Namibia. There we could expand on those stories because the few ostriches that were in Namibia couldn't produce all the eggs I wanted to import. But that's how the ostrich business started up in the United States, and I was quite big running free quarantine stations, importing eggs by the thousands.
Thousands of ostrich eggs.
Yep.
All coming out of Namibia that initially.
All coming out of Namibia, yes, all coming out of Namibia. And if you read between the lines, you'll figure out what I'm trying to say. The Namibian ostriches just couldn't produce that thousands of eggs. So what happened in between, or how they got into those 1,000 egg productions, is another story, because there were a lot of Namibian farmers, South African farmers, that had to figure out, well, if you're prepared to pay $200 for an egg, then they...
And that's what it was going for?
That's what eggs were going for, yeah. That's what eggs were going for.
And so how actually moving them at that point from Namibia to the US, could you just sort of stick them in air freight and say, you know...
That was, with permitting and everything, was legal. But as I said, read between the lines, the demand...
Some of the sourcing may have needed some creative...
Yes, creative thinking. Because if you've got to order for 1,000 eggs at a time, because you can't import them like 10. It's got to come into a batch to fill up a quarantine station. And the eggs has got to be fresh. So you've got to have a lot of ostriches just to fulfill 1,000 egg order. So, of course, that's where the old rumors and stuff started on how does this few ostriches in Namibia produce this amount of fresh eggs. But, yeah, we could go into that perhaps. I think I'm off the hook on that
statute of limitations.
Yes, on that arrangements, Donnie. But then it's not only ostriches in the US. I mean, then all the countries started firing up. I mean, visited countries and projects for China, for the Philippines, in Japan, in South America, in Brazil, in Chile. We had visitors from Chile investigating the markets. Ostriches went to the UK, from the UK to Canada, in order to get into New Zealand. In other words, there was like protocol between the countries.
So for the first time in history, ostriches became migratory birds.
Absolutely, absolutely, Donnie. You must try and figure it out. Not only on the egg side, then the actual full-size breeder birds got a demand to the UK. Now you've got to charter planes. I'm talking Boeings. I'm talking.
Yeah, because it needs a bit of standing space.
Yes,
ostrich is not it's not a chicken.
Well, I could tell you just for maybe whoever listens to this cast, just to satisfy their curiosity, a Russian AN-124 Antonov that was chartered out of Ukraine into Namibia. Those days it was $152,000 to charter a plane like that. First time a plane of that size ever landed south of the equator. Now, that's an AN-124, and it loads exactly. You know those huge planes.
It's a cargo plane. It's the back of it drops open.
At the back, and it lifts the nose open.
Oh, the nose cone lifts. Open, you can
so
actually put tanks inside.
That's what they use it for tanks.
Air transport for tanks.
Yes, but now you can offload with trucks entering from the back, going out the front part of it. But it fits exactly 324 adult breeder birds. That I could tell you, because I think it's the largest shipment of by plane of ostriches that has ever been done.
324 adult birds.
Adult birds, yes. And the crew was all Ukrainian. I mean, those Antonovs are very, very primitive, and I had the experience to fly with that crew to the UK, and we had to refuel in Lagos in Nigeria. To give you another idea, when we landed in Lagos, Nigeria, the aircraft was just too heavy to refuel on the apron, so it had to stay on the runway, and the fuel trucks had to come and refuel it. Yes. And I was handling, because those Nigerians, they wanted to refuel with cash US dollars. I mean, you've got to start sitting there and counting money, and it's not small money to refuel a plane like that. But we got safe to the UK. It was a hell of a expedition because I was the only handler on board.
For 324 adult birds.
For 324 adults.
And they can get a little bit excited sometimes, and they can
Yeah.
actually, you can get injured with handling an ostrich.
You can, although they were put into isolated crates, like six males together. The males are usually the fighting ones, but they fight when there's a female involved. You know, it's like
Kind of like people.
Kind of like people, yeah. So I remember when we got to Gatwick Airport. The state veterinarian, there was a young little girl with, one of those reflector jackets, and one of the ostriches were injured. They were fighting inside the crate, and she was in charge of this arriving shipment. But it was actually her first time that she saw, as veterinarian, saw a live ostrich. Okay, so I said, well, you're the veterinarian. This thing is cut up. You must stitch it up. She said, no ways. And I remember she asked me to do it, okay, because she's not going to handle this situation.
I mean, it's essentially a dinosaur.
Yeah. And what actually happened, the boxes or crates that they were isolated in had one of, those shade nets over to calm them even more down. And this part I remember very well. I had a Leatherman pocket knife with me. So I opened it up and I wanted to cut a smaller hole in the shade cloth, just to enter into the crate. Because remember, now I've got to try and hold the ostrich, push it to the one corner of the crate, and try and stitch this cut. Try and stitch it up. And when I needed some help, because now I've got the stitches, I've got the wound aerosol spray in my hand, and this Russian guys or Ukrainian guys from the crew of the aircraft, he was standing by. Remember, we couldn't communicate. I wasn't absolutely in a position to talk Russian with them, or at least
the
Ukrainian.
English wasn't great, so.
Yeah, so I handed him the knife, and he kind of misunderstood. He opened the knife, he had the knife, and he thought, if there's shit, he's got to kill this ostrich with the knife. Okay, so he was like getting ready, anxious eyes open or stretched out widely, I think, figuring how is he going to kill this ostrich. If the ostrich injures me, the state veterinarian, young girl, kept quite a distance. But I remember it quite well. I mean, I got out of the crate. Obviously, I had a lot of blood on my shirt and all that stuff. But the shipment were loaded onto the trucks, and the trucks went to the quarantine station. But now we had to pass passport control. Remember, this all happens now before we had to go through customs or ourselves personally. Okay, so at the end, the crew had to stay over somewhere. I had to pass customs, and I'm entering customs. They took us with a escorted vehicle to the customs section to clear your passport and all that stuff. And I was full of blood on my shirt and whatever, and everybody was staring at us. And of course, the problem was I had the bag with the US dollars in cash for the refueling money.
Here's this guy covered in blood with a bag of US dollars over the shoulder,
Absolutely.
landing in Antonov from South Africa.
Yep, yeah. It was actually it departed from Windhoek in Namibia, all the way up to the UK. But to make the story a bit shorter, it was a problem there. The buyers on the UK side, actually not the buyers, the in-between quarantine, because the birds were destined to go to New Zealand. But the protocol between countries was a problem. So Canada could import from the UK, but New Zealand couldn't import from the UK. I'm talking about live animals now, livestock.
But they could from Canada.
But they could from Canada. So it was like a whole route, getting them to the UK, having them in quarantine for 3 months. Then they went off to Toronto, laying eggs in the snow, adapting the ostriches from the Kalahari Desert to Toronto in the snow. And then eventually in Wellington in New Zealand, and I followed them all the way. So it took me to all those countries. I followed them all the way. And if I remember correctly with the figures, I know they were so long in quarantine that actually at the end, when they were released in Wellington, New Zealand, out of quarantine, I mean, now they're walking out of quarantine with baby chicks with them. So they're like increasing in value. But I can't remember the exact price, but they were sold like for $28,000 a piece. Not a breeding pair, a piece.
Goodness gracious. And you had 324 to begin with, plus a couple of new chicks.
Absolutely.
Maybe lost some in the snow?
Yep. You couldn't even make the sum on a regular size calculator. But at the end, you won't believe, it was a break-even point in that trip. And I enjoyed it. I'll do it again. We made no money at the end in New Zealand. So most of the ostriches that's in New Zealand today came via that trip, because nobody ever attended again to do such a large shipment. Wasn't my largest shipment, was the largest one by air. The largest shipment.
Tell us about that.
The largest shipment was by boat from Durban Harbour for the Prince of Jordania. Okay, so that's a different story. 500 breeder birds on a ship. Problem was when we got there, I can't put the exact dates to it, but when the ship wanted to or got closer to the harbour, it was the Gulf War. And
you're trying to get into Jordan with
we're trying to get
500 killer birds.
Yes. So we had to divert to Aqaba Harbour. It's like the two harbours, it's like 22 kilometers apart. So we had to load off in Israel, get them by barges to Aqaba, and then get them into Jordania. But all of the ostriches made it alive. Okay, one of my guys were deported from there, but that was the largest shipment, was 500 ostriches. The other shipments were all smaller.
Was that one a little bit more profitable than your round world trip to try and get things into New Zealand?
It was a better. At least there was some profit in. Yes. But yeah, and then of course what happened to the ostrich industry, just to close it off, because I think we stuck in maybe too long on an ostrich point of view.
Well, people don't know a lot about ostriches. You might be surprised by how interesting people find this.
Yeah. I see there's some farmers now all over the world in small scale that starts farming in China and all sorts of strange countries.
I think you were saying that one of the big original drivers was actually the skins, right? The ostrich leather.
Yes, the leather.
Which was the big driver, but there wasn't necessarily a very big appetite at that point for eating ostriches.
No,
right?
there was. They actually...
there was?
Yeah, the meat is the healthiest meat. Of course, it's a red meat. It's not like a white, like chicken. It's a red meat. And there was definitely a drive for that. They were promoting this in the United States as the healthiest meat because
low fat,
like
high protein.
Yes. The problem was everybody was so captured into the ostriches because of the high pricing. Nobody wanted to slaughter. And that's actually what happened to me. I got so addicted to an ostrich that I never wanted to sell off more than what I needed monthly cash flow for, because if you sell somebody a pair of young ostriches, male and a female, whatever the prices were, in 2 years' time you could have kept that as a breeding pair producing eggs again. It's
like trying to find that balance between how many of them you hold on to, like the guys say with crypto, like hodl. How much do you hodl and how much do you
exactly
do your day to day?
Exactly. But to answer your question on the meats and the stuff, there was a lot of rumor, not only meats and skin. The problem was, Donnie, if I have to think back on it today, it's the only product that I've ever came across where if the demand was so big, the supply was never sufficient. The whole of South Africa slaughtered in those years 300,000 ostriches per year. And if Mercedes-Benz wanted to do their 500 series with ostrich skin leather seats, we had to slaughter like 1 million ostriches a year. So the demand was always just too big. The same thing applied to the chain groups. It could have been Burger King or whoever. If they wanted to do a health hamburger with a patty, can you imagine how many patties, how many ostriches you had to slaughter just to introduce the meat into the market?
Yeah, and you can't just put them in a battery the way they do with chickens, right? I mean, it's a big bird. It needs some space. And
Yep, absolutely. You must tell me if we should stop continuing the ostrich conversation.
I think
but things got a bit rough in the industry. At the end, I was accused of illegal transportation of ostriches, and it wouldn't have happened, Donnie, if we didn't have had a crash on one of the planes, and it was a chartered plane. So that now becomes a problem.
This is not an Antonov, right?
No. This is smaller. No, this is one of the smaller supplying aircraft. And everything would have gone well. Everything really would have gone well. Fortunately, nobody was injured. The plane caught fire, but of course it was now on an illegal flight. And I mean, this is something I could really talk about because it made the newspapers those years. And I had to decide what to do with a chartered plane. And
so, just for a little bit of information, you were flying from where to where when this plane caught fire?
From South Africa to Namibia, filling up the gaps in
egg
demand. Yeah, that was actually not eggs. This was younger chickens, about 24 inches height or 2 feet.
Okay, I understand. So, moving the chicks around is a little bit easier than moving the full-grown adults around.
That's correct. And then the decision was to cut up the plane and bury it. That's all we could
wait,
have done.
So you're flying, I'm guessing, over the Namib Desert going into?
Yep.
And it catches fire and you decide to do an emergency landing?
No, it didn't actually catch fire in the air. We were landing in runways that was hidden in the bush. Okay. And there was a calculation error in the weather and all that, and of course, what they use for landing lights, the guys on the ground crew, they just lit 2 tires, threw them petrol and 2 tires. So that's all indication that you've got where to go and land with the stuff. And the pilot, he made a calculation error, and when he got in, the tip of the wing caught one of these windmills, what do you call it, a wind pump, a windmill.
Yeah.
And then the plane started somersaulting, and then it caught fire.
Jeez.
Yeah. So at the end, the plane was buried. Everything went well. Everything really went well. It was hidden underground.
Okay, so all I'm guessing the chicks didn't survive.
Or? There was a few that survived, and other ones didn't survive. We were fortunate to survive. Okay, but the plane was buried. Everything was underground except the owner of the plane, from whom it was chartered. That had to be sorted out. How do you explain to him?
Sorry, I lost your plane.
We lost your plane. Yep. But I knew the guy. He was from the city where I used to go to school. And remember those days, there weren't like cell phones and stuff. This was now pre-95. There wasn't like cell phones and stuff. And I knew he mentioned the price in the conversation as to what that plane was actually worth. And those days, it wasn't EFTs or money transfers, so I wrote a check for a bit more than what I figured he would take. And actually had a phone conversation on a landline with him just before that, without, of course, telling him the plane is like missing.
Yeah, I'm just wondering,
this is a nice
plane of yours. It's a very nice plane.
Yeah,
how much would you want for it?
What would it sell for? And he was telling me, hell, it's got new radio system in it, it's got new crankshafts in and all this grand stuff. Anyway, I drove to the city, got to his office. He was on the phone, so I had a check written out. Volkskas Bank, before it was Absa. Volkskas check. Left the check on the table and duck and dive back. Just left it there. He was on the phone. So he was like looking, where did R disappear to now?
What's this?
And I was waiting for him and waiting for him. And in the meantime...
I mean, just to hear back from him at some point.
Yeah. Now, I'm waiting for him to deposit that check. Okay.
Oh, you can see it hasn't cleared. Okay.
Yeah. No. I was ready for that. Then the deal is almost done. And he was calling my office in Bloemfontein and saying, wait, what happened to me? And one of my employees said, no, he went to go and see you to buy the plane or something. I don't know. We haven't seen him in days. 5 days down, he went by. Every day I called the bank. Every day. On the 6th day, the Monday, actually more than 6 days, the Monday, he deposited the check. It was too anxious staring at that check. I'm not going to mention amounts now, but it wasn't that high. But for those days, it was still a lot of money. Anyway, you must tell me if I'm dragging out this story.
No, this is fun.
But anyway, the moment he cashed that check, I knew I'm out of big trouble.
Now you're in the clear.
I'm now the proud owner of an aircraft that's buried in Namibia. So yeah,
unmarked grave.
Yeah, and then still everything went very well.
So everything's fine at this
No,
point.
everything was fine. There was no problems, nothing at all, except 3 months gone by, and the pilot, he had a few drinks in at some pub, and he was telling somebody about this accident, okay, and the word got out to the plane owner, so he calls me. He says, Colin, I heard a story. I say, what story? I heard a story you buggered up that plane.
Like,
I said, no, wait, I might have left it somewhere. Or forgot it somewhere. But anyway, I sort of put it off the cuff, but the next day he called again. He says, I just wanted to tell you, it doesn't matter to me, but if you can give me the cranks back, the crankshaft in the engines, it's a twin engine plane, and a particular instrument, I can't remember exactly what one it was, I'll give you 75,000 rand back in those days.
Which is a nice chunk of change.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not retirement money,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. But that, of course, triggered my mind, and that was the mistake, digging up that plane again. Now the problem is, aircraft can fly with those two heavy engines easily, but, I mean, those stuff weighs a lot. It's not like loading them on another aircraft and flying them back. You've got to do it by road now. But that was problem number one, was
transporting the crankshafts from the dig site.
Yeah, but we didn't quite get to that. What actually happened, we uncovered it, started stripping the crankshaft and everything, but now they were above ground, so we covered them with those, those like military camouflage nets.
Yeah, something back from your Sapper days. Your
Yeah.
So
something back.
Like, yeah.
Yes. But of course, we didn't stop. A small little accident, like an aircraft barrier or something, didn't stop me. We were going. I was when they eventually caught up my finger. I think the charges were for like 136 illegal flights or something. That's what they knew of. But I got off on that one as well. There was a bit of.
Were you occasionally sort of like handling the plane yourself?
Oh yeah, no, of course, Donnie. A lot of different planes. I wound it up. I bought a Albatross. It's a Piaggio 166 for the guys that's in the flying business. I bought it. It was a South African Air Force plane that was sold at the auction.
I suppose I just had to like repaint it. And
I didn't. They warned me a bunch of times, but
So you kept the Air Force colours?
No, I love that, especially that old eagle on the nose and all these colours. And the plane, I had the plane for a few years, used it. I had a farm up in Zambia, and it was the perfect thing because the Albatross or the Piaggio 166 were used for reconnaissance overseas because it's got such a long range. If it's got like a ferry tank, it's got 14 hours flying time, patrolling the South African seas, borders.
And coastlines.
Coastlines,
yeah.
That's the exact word. And I know that the the warnings that I got to paint it in civilian colors, because there was a few that's operationable. Quite a large plane, those with the push props. They use it for fires, air ambulances in Australia. They use the Piaggio 166s. And it has like a small little kitchen, all that stuff. It's a very nice plane. But I'm getting carried away here with the plane parts now. I'll slow down on that.
But I
one
mean, it makes
for you.
sense for you to be able to go to Zambia, to your farm in Zambia, because obviously it's covering big distances, and you can.
Oh yeah. What I actually had, I had a company in Zambia, Zam Ostrich Company. We had ostriches there, and I shared a charter flight to Holland every second week. They were exporting roses from Lusaka to Holland. And then we shared the flight every 2 weeks. I had ostriches half, and they had the roses on. And then that's how Holland got the ostriches, or a lot of them, or especially good birds, or good quality birds. But just to get back to what really went wrong, how that thing backfired on the engines.
The planting of the airplane in the desert.
Yes, it was now covered with this netting, and I had another pilot that flew for me. They used to fly newspapers. The newspapers in Windhoek, Namibia, were printed in Germiston, South Africa. So they used like a King Air to transport the newspapers. Okay.
For some of the kids, like these are things printed on paper. That's not online. Like people actually used to read them.
It's not online news. We're still in the days of actual printed newspapers. And I mean, what a big newspaper, a Sunday newspaper could weigh a lot. And it was printed in Germiston. And this guy was really bored in his job, because all he had to do is fly to Germiston, pick up newspapers, deliver it to Namibia. And of course, I got connected, and I had a bigger plan for him. As instead of a few newspapers, how about transporting some ostrich chicks, either eggs or one-day-old chicks, And anyway, all he had to do was stop at this runway in the bush, offload it, and then he goes into the regular
And this
airport.
is the same runway where you buried the...
Exactly. And then one day things went wrong, and he had to divert. There was a storm, and it was raining, and he dropped off the things. And when he got in, he had to go and refuel. He couldn't make it on the fuel, so he had to go and refuel in I think it was Keetmanshoop in the south of Namibia, and people saw the ostriches on board. But anyway, he dropped them off, and he went into Windhoek Airport. And then they were on top of him. And he had to go and show them where he was supposed to drop off the ostriches, or where did he drop them off. And, of course, that's when...
Pinpointed your airplane graveyard.
And when they got there, they saw this graveyard with this engines. And then they were looking for a dead pilot. There was actually a woman reported her pilot husband is missing. Okay, she's looking for him. And then they traced it back on the numbers to the owner who I bought it from. And he said, no, that guy, he bought that plane. He's the owner of that plane. And that's how things backfired. But there was a lot of cases on it. And let's move on to a better subject. The ostriches would be a big part of my life. Then, of course, I was in the States with the quarantine stations. And then the new government was going to take over in 1995. And there were some connections, because Derek Hanekom, the first Minister of Agriculture, you guys must know him all.
Yeah, it's 1994 first Minister of Agriculture.
Of course. Now, Derek Hanekom had a lot of trouble for exporting bananas out of South Africa without the permission of the Banana Board. So he was lucky in a similar situation. But to cut long story short, we knew that the legislation was going to slow down and open up for legal exports from South Africa. And then in 1995, I was convinced by more or less the same names that I've mentioned from Derek Hanekom. They gave us sort of the insurances that we're going to get legal permits to whatever we farm with. We'll be able to export to
So
the best
export them
possible
comfortably in the-
countries, yeah. And then I came back and bought a farm in South Africa. And what a lot of people don't realize, that was probably the largest production farm in South Africa for ostriches. So I had 1,000 females in top production, doing 300 eggs a day.
So before that, the sort of majority of ostrich production is sort of what you call the Kleinkaroo, like around Oudtshoorn, and so these very, very dry areas. But your farm is just south of Bloemfontein, which has got a little bit more water.
That's correct, but these ostriches are very adaptable. I mean, I've told you about Toronto in the snow producing eggs, in Florida, humid. And what a lot of people don't realize is the last stock that I sold, these animals get 70 years old. So you have 70 years in a breeding production. So in other words, if you've got good quality, you've got it for years. And then the technology improved so much, Donnie. We met with veterinarians from Texas A&M University, and we studied incubation techniques on the eggs. This is another unbelievable story, but I guess you don't want this cast to be over ostriches. But I mean, I could
please.
go on with this forever.
I'm finding this interesting, so
yeah,
I'm going to be selfish that way.
So we had experts. Remember, if you
Experts,
top guys. We had the top guys, veterinarians. We had. Remember, if a one-day-old ostrich chick is valued at $3,500 and it dies, like in South Africa we say it's it's very difficult to raise the chicks. Okay,
to get them past a certain point.
Yes, to get them to a certain age. But once the chick is $3,500 worth, then you get veterinarians working on that chick. It's viable to
spend the money, yeah.
To spend the money. Yeah, that was the exciting part. So we had Texas A&M University did studies because we had the old beliefs from the old schools in South Africa. I mean, I had top ostrich farmers in the Oudtshoorn area, okay, that said it was impossible to determine the sex of the baby one-day-old chick at 1 day old. You've got to wait until you can determine if it's a male or a female.
How long would you have to wait? Like a couple of weeks or?
No, that's what they said. Some of them were so old school of those farmers. They said, no, wait until the feather colors change when they're big. When that males become black and the white, females become grey. So we were way ahead of that stages in the United States. I had guys that were incubating chameleon eggs in San Diego Zoo. Now, a chameleon egg, it incubates for 9 months in nature. 9 months. It takes 9 months for a chameleon egg to hatch. So in nature, it goes through winter, summer, and then autumn before it actually hatches. So the egg goes through different seasons. Okay.
So it has to be very resilient. I didn't realize chameleons would take that long.
Yeah, but
for
now,
such a small creature.
That's it. Now those guys were expert. Now we had the saying when I was a child. They said, no, the male ostrich is black. It sits at night. It's on the nest to camouflage the nest, and the female is actually grey and she's on the nest in the day, which is absolutely true and correct, except for the fact that this guy, for the first time, took the body temperature of the male and the body temperature of the female and saw there was a 1 degree Celsius different, or 1.2 degree Celsius different in the body temperature of a male and a female. So all we had to do...
And that's from day one?
I'm not sure, but at least on a full adult breeding bird. So I don't know whether it's because of the male... having to endure more cold at night. I'm not sure what the reason therefore is. But what happened was, all of a sudden our incubators in the quarantine stations were set at 12 hours at 1 degree higher and 12 hours on the 1 degree lower. And all of a sudden...
emulate what they would have in nature, being nighttime for the male and female during the daytime.
Exactly. So we improved the world standard rates with incubation percentages at the end. The end results up to like 95% successful, where the average rates in South Africa was probably 60% or 50%
that's
on
amazing
incubators.
Jumps,
Yeah. Of course, what happened was the avian influenza, and there I was caught off guard in South Africa, because at that stage I had 14,000 birds on the abattoir section, and then I had 1,000 breeding females in the breeding section, and this is now was top of the line breeding females, because the technology already gave us the opportunity to scan the female and determine how many eggs she's going to lay for the season. Okay, so you know,
And she can be around for 70 years. So
and she could be around for 70
females
years. So we started keeping females that could produce over 100 eggs in a season, and working through the genetics. So we really had the best stock, and we were using microchip systems already that the South Africans didn't know at that stage. You must try and figure back really a couple of years now. But the main thing that cornered me was the avian influenza in the country. A lot of ostriches farmers in the Eastern Eastern Cape actually lost their flocks. It had to be killed because of that avian influenza virus that was in the country.
Once you earmark, then that's the entire flock gets destroyed.
That's what happened. Yeah, I won't mention their names, but there was big farmers that really lost a lot. But not only that, what happens is the slaughterhouses couldn't export our meats to Europe. So there you've got a problem. Now you've got birds in your feedlot waiting to be slaughtered. You can't slaughter them. You've got to exhaust all your money or cash flow for feeding them, keeping them alive, or actually you've got to do emergency slaughter with no market for exporting the meats. And it's more or less the same disaster as what we at the moment are facing in South Africa with the foot and mouth disease. Because no longer we're going to be a foot and mouth free disease country. So the exporting of meats to certain countries is going to be totally impossible. And that put a lot of strain on me. And that's how I got out of the ostrich.
Yeah, I mean, you were saying earlier that sort of early days you picked up and realized that people were leaving money on the table, and that there was this incredible demand, and the supply couldn't keep up. And then you run into something like the avian flu, and now it turns around 180 degrees, and suddenly you have this supply, but the demand just doesn't exist, and it's out of your hands.
Exactly, right? Exactly. I mean, we've got had orders for skins. So I think I still had a couple of 100 skins that were specially made for Japan. They wanted the color sun yellow. Now, who wants a sun yellow ostrich skin? But I mean, we don't argue with the buyers. We tanned the skins sun yellow to them, and we exported the skins, and they sent it back. They actually sent us a swatch of exactly the sun yellow color, and it was like a shade off, slightly shade off. But these Japanese guys were perfectionists. They wanted sun yellow. Now the problem is with getting the skin back once it's colored. Okay, the only color that you could go from sun yellow is to darker, and if you do it in black, it's like pitch black or maroon type black, and so you've got to go into a much darker color. I'm getting off the point here at the moment, but that's how I decided.
Did you have to get new skins to redo the whole thing? Or?
Yeah, no, we didn't. We just cancelled the order and said, you can have this, we'll discount it. Actually, what happened, I asked them what was the percentage of mismatch, and they said like 11% shade match. So I said, okay, I'll give you 22% discount on the price, buy it like that. And they didn't want it to. So some of the skins were tanned over into a dark maroon type colors, but it's like a long-term process. But the bank, when we had the avian influenza, I mean, bank managers leave you alone, because all of a sudden now you need cash flow. Now you need cash flow. Yeah. Feeding 14,000 birds in a feedlot, 2.5 kilo of feed per day for each bird. So, I mean, I had links, 2 or 3 links full of feed every second day or every third day.
So I understand, like, at some point it just didn't make sense, and you decided that's it, to give up on it. Let's do other things.
That's great.
I just recall, and I can't remember the entirety of the story, I think, just sort of caught a little piece of it, but you got to meet Muammar Gaddafi.
in person, inserts in the tent palace. Actually, I was introduced to him by a guy called Mustafa Alres, which was the Minister of Agriculture. And they were busy getting ready to put up a huge ostrich business in Libya. And it didn't actually happen, but I had the opportunity to spend time in Libya preparing everything, but there was a lot of involvement why it didn't happen, which I don't want to go into. In those years, things were a bit rough, and the boycotts against Libya was growing stronger. Very interesting person.
Oh, is he a fun guy?
I
mean,
think
maybe fun is too
no,
flippant
fun
to-
is probably not the worst, but you can see a lot of intelligence in his eyes. Absolutely, his mind is working like overdrive. You must get people. You look him in the eyes, you can see it. You can actually feel he's running 10,000 calculations through his brain now. Who's this guy? What is the ostriches? What is this? And his reception area is like inserts in the tent palace is like marble, but it's as big as a soccer field. And very much in control of things. They have alfalfa farms in Libya, in the desert where you don't expect water to be.
I knew they tapped an aquifer and actually ran the water out towards the coast, right?
Yes.
And everyone was laughing at him when he originally announced the plan.
Yes. And I mean, those days you had to take either go through Morocco by road that military stops for 500 kilometers, or you can go with a ferry from Malta,
Okay.
on the island, into Tripoli with a ferry. Yeah, I've been a few times there now. It's really good, guys. I would have loved to see that project work, and they were prepared to pay big money and go really big with ostrich farming in Libya.
Had things gone that way?
Had things gone that way, but I mean, there was other countries. Japan started up, the Philippines we started up, the Chilean guys from Chile we started up, in Brazil we started up guys in the ostrich business, and some of them are still successfully running. They've got like niche markets, even in the United States today, in Arizona or so. You get a small ostrich farm selling ostrich burgers, and they get enough customers that just want to try it out of curiosity's sake. And
last night I was speaking to a mutual acquaintance of us. His sister is visiting from Singapore, and says she's already got ostrich eggs, but these decorated ones, right?
Oh yeah, decoupage, yeah.
Yeah, and you can stick it on a light bulb, and but she already has a house full of these.
Full of the ostrich eggs, yeah.
And on this trip, I think she's leaving today, actually, she bought another 14. And he's like, 14?
What do you want to do?
I mean, if you're breeding them and you're making the kind of money you're talking about, that's a different story. But there's something special about this. I mean, it's a dinosaur egg.
Yeah,
really,
absolutely. Right? No, there is something special. I've seen Swiss-made watches in an ostrich egg. I mean, then we're talking huge money. I mean, it's like a $20,000 watch. When you open up the shell, it's like a Swiss watch built into it.
There's something special about it.
Yeah, something special.
So I know that, like you said, you sort of stopped on that. I know there are lots of other adventures. I don't think we're going to get through all of those today, but I did want to at least get you on for, let's call it episode 1 of Colin Vorster. But you are currently busy helping one of your other sons who's...
Yes. That I can't, Donnie, expand a lot about, but what I can say is that in that area, it's actually my younger son. He started off with an agricultural degree, and then he joined the army. Can you believe it? He must have got confused about his dad always talking rubbish about the army or stories.
It was also a very different time, right?
Yeah, this is now a very different time. But he joined the army, and then he got into a position after a year that because of the fact that they had a bachelor's degree behind him, they had to decide who to spend on money for becoming a Rooikat commander, and the decisions were there using graduate person who can fall back on his agricultural degree, not to spend the money on him, rather spend money on somebody that
Who's
needs
got nowhere else to go.
a full-time career. And then he had to buy himself out of the army. And then he went to the United States, working in the agricultural sector. And of course, they're much more advanced. So the tractors and the implements were running on satellite, GPS, those nice things. That happens today. And he saved up enough money, got back to South Africa, got the agencies for satellite internet connection on the Eutelsat fleet. Not Starlink like today, it's the Eutelsat fleet, and we're still doing it today. Got a a.k.a. license for building networks and start off with data. Then it got more complicated into monitoring of cameras at certain points.
So sort of security setup.
Security
in South
setup.
Africa, that's pretty serious business.
Yeah, to give you a brief example, I think our most recent one, it's very, very interesting, is this expensive thermal type cameras on the Lesotho border. So it's got like a 10 kilometers this way, 10 kilometers this way
That's a serious range for a camera.
Human identification, so anything that crosses the border. It's not a government project, it's for individual farmers because of theft. People coming from Lesotho taking herds of cattle across the border. So it's just detecting a human or a motorized vehicle immediately. And of course we're monitoring it 24 hours at our location in Bloemfontein. So his business expanding a lot, and it's moved over to solar energy, and now is very much involved with the guys that I think is moving the right direction with this EV charge stations for the electrical vehicles, So he's busy with quite nice projects at the moment. So I'm working for him. I'm supposed to be retired now. I'm working damn hard. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know a lot of people, some similar temperamental issues as yourself. And I don't think you're really the retiring kind. I think you actually need things to keep you busy and keep you going. And I understand, obviously, some of the things that you're busy with there is still fairly early, and there are a lot of things that you IP and so on that you can't discuss and so on. Yeah. But the name of a company, and I can make sure to drop a link or email or whatever in the description for people who might want to reach out. And
it's Safreset. Safreset is the company's name, and of course a mail would be easy. It's info@safreset.com. So. But he's in charge of the company, and the structure is not so big, Donnie, but I'm operating the Free State office. He's operating the Western Cape office from George area, or actually Wilderness area. And we've got quite a nice joint venture crew consisting of a engineer, a master electrician, 4 electricians running it. I'm not going to expand too much on that one, but yeah.
But from what I understand, that you guys are in a position where there's some serious growth.
Serious exploding growth.
It sounds very exciting. Yep. And I really do look forward for that success, because I know that your sons, their success is obviously a success to you.
Of course.
I think you're at that point where you're not trying to compete with them anymore. You actually just want to see them succeed and knock out the lights.
Of course, Donnie.
Yeah. So Colin, I want to say thank you very much for coming out today. I know that you're only in Cape Town for a very short time, and this is obviously an important time for you, because it's time to spend with your Cape Town family, with the relatives you have here, and also your beautiful young granddaughter, 4-year-old. So I know every minute you get to spend with her is magic, and you've given me a little bit of this time, so I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Donnie, man. I enjoyed it. I kind of enjoyed it.
No, that's great to hear.
We'll go for it if you have another opportunity, of course.
Yeah,
I can expand on some of the things, but there might be another story that I've got.
Sort of statute of limitations along the way.
Back pocket.
More and more things that you'd be allowed to talk about.
Yeah. Got you.
Okay, Colin, thank you very much.
Thank you, Donnie.
Appreciate that.
Take care.